First of all, the topic of what is freedom of speech in our country. And I think many people here will be quite surprised by what, at least formally, freedom of speech comprises in the United States. Then I want to look at the effects of the cancel culture or the wokeness, and how, in my opinion, it both eviscerated and deformed the tradition of freedom of speech in our country. And then the last topic I want to look at with Nadine and Cornell is, for me, just a kind of serendipity. Most of my adult life was devoted to the Israel-Palestine conflict, and in particular Gaza. And then I wrote the book on cancel culture and freedom of speech and academic freedom. And then by some serendipity, after October 7th, those two topics intersected. The issue of Gaza got caught up and is currently caught up with the whole issue of freedom of speech and academic freedom. So I want to devote most of the evening to that third topic, but I first would like, together with Nadine and Cornell, to lay the foundation. Now, just speaking very briefly, in the United States, the Supreme Court has ruled many things that will surprise, I think, people in the audience. Number one, the Supreme Court has ruled that you are allowed to advocate the overthrow of the government. You're allowed to advocate the violent overthrow of the government. Now, I know that for sure because in my youth, I spent a large part of it advocating the violent overthrow of the government, and I never suffered any legal consequences for that. In fact, my very first job interview after I graduated college, the first question was, do you advocate the violent overthrow of the government? I passed that round of the interview. In our country, you have the right, it's a protected right, to burn the American flag. That case went before the court in 1989. The then Chief Justice Rehnquist wrote a very anguished dissent. The flag was very precious to him, that was clear. But the court majority ruled that burning the American flag is a form of what they call expressive conduct or symbolic speech. In our country, the court ruled a young man walked into a Los Angeles courthouse and he had emblazoned on his coat, "Fuck the draft." The court ruled that's legal speech. It's protected by our Constitution. Our court ruled that the Nazi Party had the right to march through a predominantly Jewish community in Illinois called Skokie. In fact, there were several cases, and in one case, it was devoted to one very specific question. Does the Nazi Party have the right to display the swastika in Skokie, which, as I said, was predominantly Jewish, and there was a significant minority of Holocaust survivors? Court ruled they had the right. The court even defended the rights of, believe it or not, 8 and 10-year-olds. 8 and 10-year-olds, they wanted to wear, during the war in Vietnam, the armband, a black armband, which was a form of protest against the war in Vietnam. The court said these 8 and 10-year-olds have the right to wear that armband as a form of protest. And then lastly, the most recent case, if I'm not mistaken, there was a military funeral, a funeral of a military personnel. A religious sect, it showed up at the funeral or within its environs, holding up signs that said things like, Thank God for dead soldiers. Fags doom nations. Priests rape boys. You're, meaning the dead soldier, you're going to hell. Believe it or not, the court said that's protected speech. Now, I believe in the wake of the whole cancel culture, all of that was forgotten, regrettably. And what I want to do to begin with is to ask Nadine, who wrote on the subject and has spoken a lot on the subject, can you just tell the audience what are the limitations of freedom of speech in our country?
Thank you so much, Norman, and it's wonderful to be sharing the platform with you and with Cornell West. What a great honor, and especially that so many of you turned out for this very important subject. For those of you who haven't yet had the pleasure of reading Norman's book, I highly recommend it, not only because it is indeed side-splittingly funny, but it also is crammed with wisdom, with information, with thought-provoking ideas. And I